Hello, faculty. The purpose of this screencast is just to walk you through a reflection based on proficiency scale development. And this particular document is really in draft form. However, I think it should give you some pretty clear targets and supports as you reflect on your proficiency scale products. So, like most rubrics that you all have created for your classrooms, you'll see some language that parallels what you've used in your classrooms for learning targets you've created for students, and that is the exceeds, the meets, the approaching, and just beginning. Some of you may be more familiar with reversing those and starting with the just beginning on this stage and exceeding over here, but I thought for the purpose of this document we really want to look at the target of where we want to be, and let's make those the first two columns instead of the last thing that we read. Let's make it the first thing that we read. In addition to that, at the top of the page you'll see 4 ideas of what a proficiency scale is, and then 4 things that it is not, and that's just for clarifying what our learning has been around proficiency scales. In addition to that, at the top of the document is the document in your Google Docs, how to create a proficiency scale at CCSD, and that should help provide the continued development of where you start, where you begin, and what the action steps are to create a proficiency scale. But now that you have created a proficiency scale, we're going to look at 2 components. The first component right here is on the learning target, the student learning target that's aligned to a standard. And the second component is that the 4-3-2-1 scale really shows a development of learning progression of skills and content. So let's start with the meet standards, and if you go through these descriptors, you would be able to see as within your PLC or your department or even individually as you evaluate your proficiency scale, what is needed to really meet I guess what would be proficiency on a proficiency scale. So this is some criteria that we want to make sure is really clear for both of those 2 components of a proficiency scale. And then over here would be those things that would make it an exceeding proficiency scale. It is not required that you put proficiency scales in student-friendly language, but if you do, that's certainly exceeding what our expectations are at this point in time for proficiency scales, and then it just becomes that much more user-friendly. In addition, here's a resource of those of you who've asked a lot of questions about developing what a level 4 looks like in your content area or for a specific learning target. This is the revised Bloom's Webb's Depth of Knowledge resource. So it combines both Bloom's and Webb's Depth of Knowledge, and if you look at those higher order, deeper thinking skills, which can also connect to the 21st century skills, universal constructs, that really can help develop what you would want it to look like for your learning target. So that is a good resource for you. Finally, if you this is your first attempt at writing a proficiency scale, it's okay if you see yourself over here. It means that you've done your first attempt, but now maybe you have some more specific feedback about how to get yourself over to the meeting target writing that proficiency scale. So thank you for your collaborative work. Hope that you all can support each other through this, and this again is just a resource to help guide and give you feedback on your proficiency scales.